Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas Cullins, LLC, specializing in business litigation and personal injury cases for over 40 years.
All right, Renee Chatelain, today's speaker. I first met Renee when I was a 13-year-old playing American Legion baseball with her brother. In my opinion, she was already a star, an accomplished ballerina that I had seen on the news and read about in the newspapers. At Redemptor's High, Renee glided through the hallways as dancers tend to do, always with a smile on her face and an easy-breezy personality that drew people to her. When I played football, she was a Wolfette, our dance team at RHS, where I'm sure she was the captain. Before she left high school, she danced on the national stage. Renee went on to graduate from LSU with a BA in history and a JD from LSU Law School. Somewhere in that time frame, she was a co-founder of the Mid-City Dance Project, teaching ballet and dance, as well as educational opportunities in dance to underserved and special needs youth. As fate would have it, I got to see her in action when the Big Buddy program started their Dancing for Big Buddy fundraiser, and Renee was a pro dancer and choreographed a routine for one of the participants, who would later become her husband, Kevin Lau. But that's a story for another day. As I waited to videotape Whitney Van and Leonard Augustus, Renee's Mid-City students hung on her every word while practicing their routines, and later, after practice, clamored around her for guidance and attention. I'm sure there are hundreds of young ladies around Baton Rouge that are more like her children than former students. Renee claims to have had 4 careers and counting. She began a professional career as a ballet dancer and still remains active as a choreographer, teacher, and panelist. Most recently, she served on faculty at the Ballet Festival of India in Mumbai and as a speaker at the Women in Dance Conference at New York University. Choosing law as a second career, Renee is an attorney and is still active with the Baton Rouge Bar Association and with the Middle District of Louisiana's RISE Federal Reentry Program. For a decade, Renee also served as a classroom teacher in social studies and headed the dance departments and fine art departments at 2 independent schools. Renee considers her passion project the creation and staging of the Fading Line, a commemoration of the 1953 Baton Rouge bus boycott, a multimedia performance which tells the story of this landmark event in our city. Since 2010, Renee has served as an arts administrator, first at the Manship Theater as the executive director, and presently as the president and CEO of the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. She serves on several boards locally: the Foundation for East Baton Rouge Parish Schools, the City Club of Baton Rouge, Politicraft Incorporated, and the Shaw Center for the Arts. She is an advisory board member of several national arts programs, including the American Mural Project and Women in Dance. That brings us to today. And as I take my seat, I will ask each of you to become members of the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge so she doesn't have to. Today's speaker, Renee Chatelain.
Thank you so much, Todd, and thanks for not bringing up a lot of other stories of when we were 13. Thank you all for having me here today. Steve, thank you for all the enthusiasm and all the costume members. Thank you very much. The last time I had the privilege of speaking to this Rotary Club, I was new to the job at the Arts Council, filled with ideas and enthusiasm about how the arts sector could become more involved and intentional in changing lives in our city. 2 years and a couple of months in, and this is no surprise to those of you who know me, I'm still full of ideas and enthusiasm, but perhaps am armed with a bit more experience and wisdom from all of you. In any discussion involving the arts, I often hear, "I'm not creative, I can't even draw a stick figure," to be followed by many heads shaking in agreement. The truth is that dismissing the arts altogether as a serious component of a successful community misses the mark. I see by the creative costumes in this room, or at least Lane and maybe Steve's attempt at one, you are ready and willing to hear about the deal of the arts. Credit for that title goes to Rolf McCollister in the Baton Rouge Business Report, with whom I am in constant conversation because of our joined belief that it is necessary and vital that the foundational components, business and industry, government, education, and arts and culture, be equally strong, and at the same time integrate with each other to yield an appealing, energetic, and prosperous community. For years now, Baton Rouge business and industry leaders, along with government leaders, have attended trips to other cities to learn about what makes those locations successful, appealing, profitable. Cities like Austin, Orlando, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh not only recognize arts and culture as a vital resource, they have taken the sector seriously and invested in the arts. The results? Thriving, growing markets appealing to industry, tourism, and overall economic development. I would like to challenge you, as we have challenged ourselves at the Arts Council, to work to have Baton Rouge be the city that others traveled in to study and to emulate. To that end, the Arts Council has tested the waters, pun intended, with the Ebb and Flow Festival. In 2015, I reported to you that we wanted to acknowledge Baton Rouge's proximity on the greatest river in our nation, the Mississippi, and use our unique location to bring attention to the global importance of Baton Rouge. I talked about an international festival along the banks of the river. In Baton Rouge, we put this idea into motion, and I'm thrilled to report that this weekend marks the second such Ebb and Flow Festival. We have aligned the annual theme of the festival with that of tourism plans of Visit Baton Rouge and the Louisiana Office of Tourism to maximize focus and resources in bringing tourism and industry to our city. This year, the theme, From Brazil to Baton Rouge, from the Mississippi to the Amazon, has drawn the Brazilian consulate, the president of the Brazilian Arts Foundation, the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, and representatives from the U.S. Department of Commerce to Baton Rouge this weekend. Marketing Baton Rouge through the engine, thank you. Marketing Baton Rouge through the engine of this festival has reached regional Brazilian businesses as well, connecting with the Louisiana economic development and the tourism industries from Texas to the Florida Keys. The lessons learned from our study of South by Southwest are being applied with Ebb and Flow, and already in year 2, we are seeing the international business community and the tourism industry take note. Expanding this city branding conversation through the month of April is the goal here, using the Baton Rouge Blues Festival, 3rd Street Songwriters Festival, among others, to build an appeal for business conferences and connections on a national and international level. The Arts Council, for instance, is working with representatives from the National Endowment for the Arts to bring a cohort of agents from Europe and Asia to Baton Rouge to the Blues Festival in 2019. The pitch, 90% of the artists presented at Blues Fest are local and regional blues artists with roots here in the Capital Region, making it an ideal marketplace for signing authentic talent. The 3rd Street Songwriters Festival also capitalizes on local talent who traditionally have had to move to Nashville to get representation. This year, over 125 artists across a 9-state region, along with national agencies and talent scouts, have registered to participate, which promises diverse songwriting performances at local bars and restaurants on or near 3rd Street in downtown Baton Rouge for all of us locals to enjoy. These events and others like the Louisiana International Film Festival, the Baton Rouge Brass Band Festival, and the We Festival provide great opportunities to do business, support the local economy, and give access to great art at free or affordable levels. It has been really exciting to see the Metro Council support 3 proposals to expand cultural districts in this city. The Arts Council is now looking to develop policy so that such a designation is meaningful to our business community, our artists, and our residents. We're looking to create and expand other cultural districts in the community to incentivize revitalization, and we stand as willing partners with the Regional Development Authority, Capital Area Finance Authority, private business owners, and others in this process so that affordable artist workspaces complement existing businesses and residences for overall improved quality of place. There's a new creative energy here, and we want to celebrate and retain this talent. Intriguing events are sprouting up throughout the city in the culinary and maker product markets. This year, the Baton Rouge Arts Market is celebrating 20 years of providing monthly markets with artists and craftsmen, and has added opportunities for entrepreneurs with special needs from ARC and Gateway. Baton Rougeans now enjoy Mid-City Makers Market, Wonder South, and other makers events throughout the city. And then from Wings Mania, that's coming up, and the Capital City Mac Fest of Go Rouge, to Alt BR podcasts, B Baton Rouge e-newsletters, and assembly required conferences. There are multiple diverse events popping up everywhere. What is so fantastic about these creative happenings is that they all share enthusiasm and information about the best and most positive aspects of our city, from the traditional to the avant-garde. Attend their events, listen to their broadcasts, buy their wares, and enjoy this new wave of community innovation. To further incentivize talent retention, the Arts Council has awarded small travel stipends to artist ambassadors who live here but who are working around the world. We have in this ambassador program this year a trumpet player working with displaced tsunami victims in Japan, a puppeteer working with the Jim Henson Institute, a jazz musician introducing the sousaphone to indigenous people in New Zealand, and a poet invited to speak at a prestigious National Creative Writing Symposium. We need to celebrate the international reach of our creative population, not only when they are far away, but when they are working right here in our community, so they continue to call Baton Rouge home. The Arts Council facilitated an arts summit last summer to provide artists and arts organizations a platform with which to express their needs and address some of those needs in a series of sessions facilitated by local, regional, and national professionals. This year, the Office of the Mayor President for East Baton Rouge, the Louisiana Division of the Arts, and the Louisiana First Foundation are supporting an expansion of this conference, creating a statewide symposium in Baton Rouge. The Arts Council would like to launch Art Lift at this year's conference. LIFT is an acronym for Literacy and Financial Training. With adequate funding, Art Lift will provide a year-long training in business development for artists and arts organizations, culminating in their delivery of a community improvement project. Other programs like this one are already in place in Lafayette, New Orleans, and Shreveport. They are supported by their local chambers of commerce, private businesses, and municipalities, and they have produced incredible results. I would love to see this city support its arts business in this way. The benefits to us would be palpable and positive. Creative relief has its roots in our tragic flood of 2016, but the positives of the planning and implementation that resulted from this tragedy have had far-reaching effects. The Arts Council went to work to create a portal for resources and access for its arts constituents, and to put together a plan for addressing the psychosocial needs for displaced populations in shelters during emergencies. This online and on-site program got national attention and was noted at the United Nations by FEMA. Since that time, the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge has served as part of an advisory cohort in response to the emergencies in Houston, Miami, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Working with traditional education sectors, or the traditional education sector, the arts can enhance effective workforce development and better prepare students for global citizenship. The Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which was mentioned last week by Congressman Graves, calls for STEAM programs because it has been shown that STEM alone, without arts, limits learning, application, and training. Non-traditional arts education programs help to provide all citizens the opportunity to enhanced life experiences. Along with the Alzheimer's services of the capital area, we are planning to produce our second Creative Aging Symposium, offering information and tools to strengthen memory, alleviate stress, and address diverse health needs through the creative arts. Targeted workforce development programs at the Arts Council provide opportunities for special needs adults. Those individuals are released, and also with individuals who've been released after being incarcerated for more than 5 years, the homeless, and the mentally ill. In addition, we are in conversation with the Health Corridor regarding arts components that provide greater accessibility, inclusion, and healthy living practices. The last time that I spoke here, I asked you to imagine our corporate buildings throughout the city, our bus hubs and parks being enhanced by world-class sculpture. Since then, through the generous support of private donors, Baton Rouge has enjoyed temporary interactive public art exhibits. The one, namely, that I'm talking about is Borders by Icelandic artist Steinar Thorsteinsdóttir, which was first created for the United Nations and which exhibit, while in Baton Rouge, has appeared in The Advocate over 20 times and on numerous social media platforms. Also, I commend this Baton Rouge Rotary Club for your investment in the permanent sculpture exhibit that we got a peek at last week. This incredible sculpture is a great foundation for a quality, citywide public art plan. Cities who have seriously engaged their arts sector are the ones that others seek to emulate, and the one that businesses and industry desire. We invite you to engage the Arts Council as the official arts agency for the City of Baton Rouge, Parish of East Baton Rouge. Bring us your ideas. Allow us to connect your business, school, home, or your favorite recreation spot to the great creative minds of our city. The arts in your community are an incredible and foundational asset, only limited by the amount of financial support provided. Mayor Woody Dumas famously said, "The arts are the best insurance policy a city can take on itself." Invest in your arts sector, serve on boards, buy art, donate to arts organizations, attend events, and be a discerning audience member. Competition is good for the market. Expect excellence and support high-quality ingenuity. Artists not only can shape the social, economic, and physical structure of places, we need them too. And that is the deal of the arts. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any questions that you might like to ask? I'll ask our Elvis and drummer boy to run those microphones out there if there are any questions out there.
Yes.
How are you working with LSU and their arts program?
So the question is, how are we working with LSU and their arts program? We're actually working with LSU, with Southern, and BRCC. With LSU, they are working in the performing arts realm on a combined, multi-platform communications and ticketing system. That will be a service in which, once they research and plan it, will be implemented through the Arts Council that will give some joint marketing services to our local arts organizations. And it will also be a portal where everybody can go to see what arts events are happening in the city. So that's one of the main, in the performing arts realm at LSU. In the visual arts at LSU, we're working on the public art plan. I want to also acknowledge that Alki Salakis really was the inspiration for the Ebb and Flow Festival. Speaking of how the way that Baton Rouge had the capacity to have a biennale, right? We also have a very vibrant visual arts and graphic arts program that we work in tandem with the LSU Visual Arts Department. We'd love to continue to work with the landscaping as we do this public art plan and strategy, and they'll be part of that. Southern University, we're working to help them. They have been renovating their gallery there. They have an art gallery and a museum run by Vivian Kerr, and it is extraordinary. The collection is amazing, just like LSU Museum of Art. And they had some damage due to some flooding or trying to put the resources together, right, to get it back up and running. It is a jewel, and it's on the bluff, just stunning. And so we're working with her, and of course we continue through our River City Jazz Masters program to work with Southern and LSU through their music programs. With BRCC, it's workforce development, and we're at the beginning of that structure where we want to work with them in some of the training in the creative arts. And what I mean by that is but sound engineering, light engineering, the graphic design, also welders and other training with fabrication is really important to some of the artistic structures when we're talking about putting sculptures up, perhaps at the health corridor or those other places. So in higher ed, that's how we're working. We also have ongoing interns. And so I just sent a couple of interns from LSU the other day to the Baton Rouge Symphony to help them with some, and so we sort of coordinate that effort.
Renee, we at LPD, we're doing a documentary on a world-class artist that's doing an installation for the Children's Hospital Lady of the Lake. But what I was wondering is, as we're building all of these new schools, there'll be a big bond issue and everything. Have you talked or thought about maybe doing a small percentage? You know, there's a 1% for the arts and buildings and everything on the state level. How about, you know, just as we're planning new buildings, public buildings, to include the arts?
Yeah, and you know, so is there a percent for art program that we can put together locally that will work with new construction? And that's part of the policy that we're looking to develop with the cultural districts, starting there. And not just with new construction. You know, we've had several meetings with some of the realtors in town, and I know I can say Hank Siraj has been really great and open in conversation about that. So it's also buildings that are renovated, or if you need to keep a building insured and it's not occupied or a complex, you know, we can put artist workspaces in on a temporary basis and have, you know, actual occupancy in those buildings to keep them insured, and that will serve our artists and it will help to serve our real estate. But in fact, Kevin and I, my husband, were talking about this really great program in New York that you get tax incentives locally for the number of nonprofit and the number of arts nonprofits you put in any reconstruction or renovated building as well as new construction. And so we really need to look at that. We have none of those programs, and we have world-class visual artists here that could do extraordinary work and work with children in schools to make that happen. And it would just be a great collective symbiotic relationship to have. So, you know, stay with me on that, because we want to be able to build the policy and the consensus to get that passed.
One way back in the back. Barbara.
Barbara.
I know you get some of the money from the Decentralized Arts funds.
Is there any threat to that in the current budget process?
Barbara Otten, I love you for asking this question. So she's talking about decentralized art. Let me tell you how the regranting works for the Arts Council itself. So we're one of 9 regional arts councils. We serve Baton Rouge, and that's what I talked about today because we're the Baton Rouge Rotary. But we actually do this same work in 11 parishes. Okay, and in those 11 parishes, we give a decentralized grant, regranting dollars that is commensurate with the population, okay? And it is pennies, okay? So that most of these organizations are getting, at the most, the largest $10,000 or less at this point. The average gift or grant is around $3,000. Think about if you had to do any initiative with $3,000. There's a city parish granting arm that's $50,000. We have over 30 arts organizations in the city. Divide those numbers. It is pennies. And so with the state, we're always under threat of being taken out of the budget. And in fact, we have officially been out of that budget. But Jay Darden, when he was in the lieutenant governor's office, literally borrowed funds from the tourism sector to put into arts, and that's how we're surviving right now. And so we're talking to, on the state level, we're talking to the Division of the Arts and trying to work with lobbyists to put together something, to put together a proposal so that we will not be in the general operating budget, but will actually be a line item that we can really work from, and then we can start to build from there and not be threatened every single year as we go into session. But it is always a threat, and it is a real shame because Louisiana is the I think you would agree with me, the most culturally rich state in the United States. We are the great exporter of jazz. We are the great exporter of so much indigenous music, dance, visual art. And we don't really put the resources here in this state to educate our populations about our gift, and we don't really market it within our own community so that there will be this kind of support or the groundswell to get legislation passed to keep this in place. So we really need to make that happen, and hopefully we can get some lobbying organized to go that route.
Do you have any plans to reestablish the community fund for the arts in terms of mechanism for raising money?
Marvin Borgmeyer, I knew you were going to ask me that question. So really important that we need a private funding arm, and we want it to be competitive because we want organizations to constantly grow and be inspired, and then also work with others in the community, not create silos, but really to work across the network. And so we're working on that plan, but without dollars being given for that initiative, we cannot fund any, we can't really meaningfully fund anything. So it is really important that when you are asked to be part of a community private funding project, that you really take that seriously and invest, because we can only re-grant it out if we have it to give. And we have seen a real, I'm gonna say this comment too. What we've seen is that the climate for philanthropy has changed, and many of the large corporations have their own foundations, or they have employee-driven philanthropy arms. And what's interesting is when you go to these, they will usually identify initiatives. We fight poverty, we fight, maybe it's Alzheimer's, maybe it's a specific initiative. Look at our community. No one, or let me not say no one, never say never, but no one that I have seen specifically puts as a corporate initiative arts and culture. No one. So what you do is that you leave us to use other paths. In other words, we have to say we're helping the senior population because you're helping seniors, rather than support the arts and our initiatives in helping the community. So I would say to you, when you go back as a leader and you look at your corporate giving, advocate for arts and culture. Advocate for that, because we are looking to get that kind of funding to do the very things that I talked about today. And so once we have that as an initiative, then we can look to a private funding arm, and to really, but I am committed to, when we do that, and that's a when, not an if. When we do that, it is always going to be a competitive process. Capacity building. What we see with the arts organizations here is that they really need to learn more about being a nonprofit and how to operate. Boards need to be strengthened, right? We need that business capacity to be built, and so we want to incentivize that, and you do that through funding.
I'm going to ask this about arts and education for young. How are we, raising up young artists, but also how are we raising up a new generation that supports the arts?
Thank you, Janet. So how do we teach and educate the next generation to appreciate and be part of the arts? That comes in letting artists into the educational process in a really meaningful way. We just did a census over all those artists in our community who are working in the education sector. And the greatest challenge for those organizations was actually access. They had quality programs, they had quality artists, they had lesson plans, they were aligned with state standards, aligned with the curriculum, and then because of some, they were planning a day with the principals and the administration, and they show up and, it's a field trip, the kids aren't there. There's a real disconnect with the communication within the school systems, but you have a myriad of arts organizations here, and we are in touch with all of them to ensure that there is pre-K, and in some cases 0 to 3, right? Arts integration and arts education through college level. And we have some really quality programs here. We just need to be let in the door. And it's interesting because we have other programs. Point Capee has a 0 to 3 program that is very rich, and that we are able to send artists to Iberville, Ascension, Livingston. We need to do a better job here.